Toleration, be the love. Before pride and exaltation, be the love. Be the love.
You are listening to Be the Love, transcending through the shadows into a higher state of consciousness. We are souls on the journey, opening up the conversation to heal, awaken, and connect ourselves and the planet to a higher vibration of love frequency. It starts with you. Everything you need is within you. This is your time. I am Stacy Musial.
And I am Sam Fernandez, and we are your co-hosts at Be the Love podcast. Thank you for tuning in and ascending with us. Hop on board the Ascension Bus.
I'm Lara from Light Coast by Lara. I'm the Tigers of the Light.
This is Brad Panopoulos.
Hi guys, this is Nina Sauer.
This is Dig with Sacred Fire Arts.
Namaste. My name is Angela Legh, and you're listening to Be the Love podcast.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Be the Love, transcending through the shadows. I am Stacy Musial.
And I am Sam Fernandez.
And we are your co-hosts and souls on the journey. And thank you so much for tuning in this week. And if you've enjoyed listening to our show, we would be so grateful for a 5-star written review on iTunes. Reviews really help the show become more visible and spread the word to others. And if it feels safe for you, I'd like to invite you to begin to get centered with us. I would like to begin by inviting you to take a beautiful cleansing breath in through your nose and out through your mouth, releasing anything that is keeping you from being present. And take another deep breath in through your nose, breathing in calm, peaceful, loving energy, and breathing out anything you are ready to release. And take one more breath in through your nose, breathing in light and love for yourself, and breathing out that light and love and send it to all of humanity, remembering that you always have your breath to come back to. Today we have Angela Legh. Angela grew up in San Francisco, California. She had an alcoholic father and an angelic mother who both had profound impact on her life. Her father taught her that the behaviors of others made her a powerless victim, and her mother taught her to be loving to everyone, including those who hurt you. At 6 years old, Angela's family home was destroyed by a fire. Angela then grew up to marry an emotionally abusive man, which she stayed with for 32 years because she didn't want to hurt him and didn't have the internal strength to leave. The night of the Tubbs Wildfire in Northern California in 2017 was a catalyst for her personal growth when her house was reduced to ash. When everything in her life was gone, Angela was forced to examine her relationship, and she realized it was toxic and she was not going to get better. So she made the decision to leave. Angela is now an author of self-development mentor. She is best known for her joyous approach to life. Her children's book series, The Bella Santini Chronicles, has received high praise and is known for helping children learn how to manage their emotions. Her online course entitled Live, Love, Laugh connects adults with curiosity, wonder, and playfulness. So thank you so much for being here with us today, Angela.
Thank you. I am so grateful for the opportunity to talk with you and your audience. And, I hope that people find my message to be uplifting.
Absolutely. Well, we're excited to dive in here and learn about your journey and your message that you were sharing with the world. So it sounds like you've had quite the journey. I'd love to hear if you could tell us a little bit about how that wildfire sparked your conscious awakening and how did that really change everything for you?
Oh, wow. It was in 2017, so it wasn't that long ago. But that night was unreal. At the time I had a government job and I was responsible for employee safety. So I had to report to work the next morning, after having evacuated with the fire on our tail, I heard so many stories from other victims of the fire. That night, 5,000 homes burned and 25 people lost their life. And I don't know if it was sharing the stories with others and hearing, there were just horrific stories that people had. But something about that fire caused me to go into a dark night of the soul. Mm. And I questioned my existence. I questioned, what is all of this about? I remember going into a Macy's store. It was October in Northern California. It gets rainy. And I didn't have any shoes. So I remember looking at the array of boots, turning around and walking out because I just couldn't see the point of, what's the point of buying shoes, even though I needed them. And so I was in this really introspective place. And at the time, someone had recommended that I read a book on narcissism. And I saw my life in those pages. It was like a fly on the wall of my marriage. And while I don't believe in labeling people, because I think we're all so much more than any label could ever, any box that we could be put in. I know that my ex used narcissistic tools to manage his existence. And I allowed it. And so what I say is I needed to get out of the battleground before I could really truly start healing and examining where my role is and taking responsibility, and then healing those inner child wounds, which I can trace all the way back to my childhood. How did I end up in that marriage? How did I stay in that marriage? All of that is informed by my childhood. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, it's definitely sounds like the journey. And, I think we do, tend to, a lot of those things, the patterns can get traced back to the early childhood wounds and how we tend to continue those patterns until we wake up and recognize that we can, change. And I love what you said about just the, not labeling people, because I think there's a lot of labels that go on, and, and what you said about, just narcissistic tools, because, that's the coping. That's how people cope, right? It's and it's coping with,
and it's a learned behavior.
Yeah, and I think we tend to label too many people in this country, or in this world, rather than really seeing people for who they are deep within. And so, can you talk a little bit more about that?
And it's interesting because I did a blog post about the Pixar movie Float. And it's a little 5-minute animated short about a dad whose baby floats. But the dad is concerned with how the neighbors see this and how society will respond to this huge gift of floating. But the dad sees it as something that he should limit. And so what he does is he tethers his child and he fills it a backpack full of rocks, which that's such a great analogy for what I teach. And this child is now weighed down. And it isn't until the dad realizes that his actions have caused his son tremendous pain, that he decides, you know, I don't care what society thinks, I'm going to allow my son to be my son. Oh my God. It's like, and that speaks to labels, because that movie, that little clip is promoted by different autism awareness groups because of the labels, because of the way people look at things or people that are different. And when we can look at each other and see each other through the eyes of love, and not be afraid of something that's different, but be curious about something that's different, that is when we'll be living in heaven.
Yeah, when, you know, looking through the eyes of love to others and also to ourselves, because I think those labels tend to be self-reflective as well. And we you know, people can take on.
Yeah, that is in my online class, I have a week of self-trust, and self-criticism is a part of that, just rethinking how we, our self-talk and our self, you know, I'm so put in the bad word, and, you know, no, don't claim that for yourself, because you are so much more than whatever you can call yourself, any label.
Yeah, and the, you know, the most powerful statement we can say is anything after the I am, right?
Yeah. So I'm very cognizant of saying I feel as opposed to I am. And that really speaks to what I teach kids in my children's book, is to feel every feeling. I believe that the prison that people live in is when they resist, embrace, or escape a feeling. And I think that our ego, trying to keep us safe, tells us to avoid a feeling. But freedom lies in allowing the feeling. I can tie this all in because I had, as it says in the introduction, an alcoholic father. I didn't know, basically, I did not like my father. I had no love for him and no respect for him. I didn't know until I was an adult, in talking to my aunt, that he was a very sensitive child. And his parents didn't approve of his sensitivity. So he was labeled, and that brought in feelings of inadequacy. He escaped those feelings with alcohol, but alcohol turned him into a monster. And we were sexually, emotionally, and physically abused. I did not even remember any of that because I repressed so much from my childhood. And it's only in the last couple of years that it's really come to light. My sisters have some memories of him stomping up the stairs. Where's the bitch? Where's it, that thing? And just the palpable rage just coming off him. And that is the environment that we were raised in until my mom left him. So what happened is that I rejected I repressed all of that stuff, but I also rejected anger. And I would not allow myself to feel anger, but I was in judgment of anyone who expressed anger. So if we go back to that comment about the backpack full of rocks, when we push away a feeling or embrace a feeling, we are carrying it with us. Alcoholism, substance abuse, these escape mechanisms can't work because the feeling stays with us until we face it. And so I say that I'm a light worker talking about shadows because the burden of those shadows causes so much havoc and so much pain in the lives of people. And I would love for people to just know that the fear we have of facing painful feelings keeps us from living, basically. And it keeps us in this prison. So, by teaching children how to neutrally embrace or feel a feeling without grabbing onto it and keeping it, I'm trying to help children avoid substance abuse or even choosing suicide, which would be the ultimate escape.
Yeah, and I can relate to a lot of what you just said. My father was also alcoholic, and he was also, and I learned this just like you did, kind of after he passed away a couple of years ago, kind of after the fact, that he was a very sensitive child, and he was a loner, and he actually got blamed by his father for his brother's death. His brother ended up dying of cancer on the way to the emergency room when my dad was driving. So his dad tied the two together. And I think he was 16 at the time, or 17, something like that. But so yeah, and there was a lot of physical and a lot of mental and emotional abuse, a lot of it more geared towards my sisters and my mom than me and my brother, but we still felt, there was still abandonment with us. He would give us a 20 and say order some pizza, and he would go to the bar and stay there until it closed. But another thing that you said that really hit me hard was, how, so he was sensitive when he was a child, and he got berated for it, and he got talked down to, and he got, physically abused and mentally and emotionally abused as well. So he didn't know how to handle, there was no like healthy, family base there. And then in turn, unfortunately, that's how it was with my childhood as well. He was as encouraging to me, I think, as he possibly could be, but it still, wasn't enough. And I ended up, getting into substance abuse and just being a shitty kid, basically.
But you were coping.
Right. And the only way I knew how, and the only way I knew how, because that was the only way, I mean, as a child, I really didn't get told differently. So I was doing what my peers did, but yeah. And, unfortunately, again, it goes up in the childhood. And now I do have, some kind of deep-seated stuff with my childhood, just like he had with his childhood. And I think it just keeps going back generation after generation.
I talk about, there is a scriptural reference, the sins of the father are visited upon the child. And what you just said is a perfect example of that. And it's not that the father necessarily sinned, but the father never was taught how to feel
Right.
safely, how to safely feel.
Right.
And when I think about, you know, your scenario is similar to mine. If my father or his parents or me or my ex-husband, any one of us had learned what I teach kids in my books about how to be neutral with feelings, all of that pain could have been avoided. All of it.
Right.
And that's why I talk about the prison that happens when you escape or repress a feeling, because the fear of feeling creates much more pain than ever you would have in actually facing the feeling.
Right. Right. And yeah, and that's actually something that, you know, throughout my entire childhood, adolescence, adulthood, all that, that I have tried to avoid those painful feelings, you know, and like you were saying, you know, you grew up to avoid people who were angry, but if people got angry, you got judgmental as to why they were angry, you know, and that was kind of the same boat for me. Unfortunately, again, you know, neither one of us had really the tools to be able to, you know, cope and process those feelings when we were kids. But I do know I don't have any children, but I'm sure there are people listening who do have children who also came from abusive homes like that. So my question for you would be, not only, you know, for us adults, you know, how do we embrace the feelings that we had when we were, you know, children, and, you know, we felt neglected or whatever? How do we embrace those as adults, number one? And number two, for the listeners who have kids in this similar situation, how do they like encourage their kids that it's okay to, you know, to tell me what you're feeling, it's okay to process this stuff, so they don't end up growing up, you know, and having all those repressed emotions? Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So what I believe is the easiest, and because feelings are so layered and so can be so dense, it's also difficult. But the easiest way is to be aware that you're having the feeling, acknowledge that you have the feeling. So I feel this way, and then allow yourself to have the feeling, because the biochemistry of a feeling is 90 seconds. As long as our mind does not engage in the concept of a feeling. So our mind either grabs onto the feeling and makes it part of who we are, or pushes the feeling away. And that is engaging in the concept of the feeling. But if we can just be neutral by allowing that feeling to flow, chances are it's going to move through and not bother us for too long. But I do want to say it's like peeling an onion. So it will revisit you and revisit you and revisit you. And, you know, I have spent days with a comforter pulled over my head, sobbing, processing some of these feelings. You know, it's hard, but it's also so beneficial to everyone.
Yeah. And I like what you said. I'm a psychotherapist. And so I share that with my clients as well, that, you know, the feelings, you know, it's sometimes it's the fear of going into the feeling, but once you get there, it is just, they last 90 seconds in your system. And it's just the energetic, you know, when you can go into that feeling and go into that layer, it helps to release that. But it does take that time to really observe those feelings in your body and what they are doing and how they are moving through you. And especially, so like one thing because there's a difference too between, so when someone's first starting out with this work, right, and starting to really do the healing journey, sometimes one of the things I get a lot of is people will come in and their emotions are so intense that they don't really know what they're feeling because there's so many. And so so versus someone who's been doing the work for a little bit, and when those feelings start coming up, they can, identify them a little bit easier and where they're coming from. So I'm wondering what you would say for someone who's just starting out with this journey, who's, having these intense feelings, not really sure where to start with that and what they are, how they can move through, when they're first starting out.
As you say, it can be really tough. I mean, I had this lifetime of repressed emotions that I had to sort out in the last 3 or 4 years. What I believe is that if you think of a feeling that is part of the mix, but it's a feeling that isn't that intimidating for you. So for me, sadness was easy for me to feel. It was my go-to. And so I processed a lot through sadness. And it took me probably 2 years to be able to express anger. So you don't go for that really hard feeling. Start out small, take baby steps, give yourself grace, because you don't have to do it all at once. It is an onion, and you're going to peel a little bit at a time, but you will get there.
And it is a process. And I think recognizing too that there's never an end point. We're always evolving, we're always peeling back. And so also just having that compassion as we're moving through that process and doing what we can in the moment, what's coming up. So I think that,
it's so, being the love for yourself, having that self-love is so important. Just giving yourself the grace and allowing yourself, even if you have to allow yourself to escape for a while, give yourself a break and allow it.
Absolutely. And recognizing that, healing takes time, and it doesn't have to be an all the time thing. It's not a marathon, it's a, lifelong journey.
It is. Though I wish I knew you when I started, because I did the marathon.
So did I. That's why I can speak for that.
Yeah, I think we all probably did that.
I think,
it's like, if I'm not doing something healing today, I'm not doing my work.
Right.
I think at some level, when those of us who went through that much abuse and pain, our souls chose the mission for us to learn from that childhood and grow so that we could help others. And I think that kind of feeds into, for me, it was like, okay, I've got to get through all this stuff so that then I can have the wisdom to help others.
And that was a very important statement you just said, because I know for me, when I was, growing up in this abusive home and even out of it, I would have things happen, like I have gastrointestinal issues, and from things in childhood, when I was a teenager, I had 3 bleeding ulcers, so it was all stress related from childhood, right? And I would ask myself, why is this happening to me? Why is this happening to me? It's not happening to anybody else. Other kids are fine. They've got good homes, whatever. Why is this happening to me? And I think, a lot of us that have had this kind of trauma, or any trauma really, has asked themselves that question multiple times. Why is it happening to me? Why is it happening to me?
Why do I have to go through that?
Right. And then you said, well, it's not a why is it happening to me? It's your soul chose this path for a reason. Your soul wanted to learn something from this, and if you think about it that way, for me anyway, it takes the edge off a little bit, it removes the sting a little bit. It's not so much anymore of why is this happening to me. It's more now, okay, what does my soul want me to learn from this situation? And then that kind of opens up, a whole world of other good things that, you could, emotions and stuff that you could work through, because you kind of stepped away from the victim role.
I was going to say that. Yeah.
Sorry.
Because when you're asking, no, it's okay. You said it and it's all good. When you're asking, why is this happening to me? You are the victim. When you can step back and say, okay, I don't want this, but I know my soul chose this situation, and I will somehow benefit from it. Then it's a choice, and it's not victim anymore. So it's empowering to do that.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely empowering to do it. And yeah, I and it's also too, positive self-talk.
It is.
It's like we were talking about, why is this happening to me? No, this, I need to learn something from this. Yeah, it sucks. The situation or whatever, it sucks. And there's,
not easy, it's not fun.
Yeah, and that's okay. It doesn't have to be, rainbows and lollipops all the time, but it also doesn't have to be, dark clouds and pain all the time.
Yeah.
And that's something that I had to learn,
I think we all do.
Yeah.
'Cause, there are so many people in the spiritual and psychology world that will tell you to focus on the good. And, and what it's doing is ignoring the shadow parts. We must face our own shadows.
Yeah.
In order to be whole.
Right.
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of pressure on people, especially in, light workers, spiritual community, where, we're being told, like, follow the light, be the light,
Be the light.
And so when we have to recognize there's balance. It's not dual. It's not like either or, right? There's gray, there's messiness, there's, humanness, recognizing
on earth
and loving ourselves through our humanness, and, what that truly means. And then, on the other side of that too, I know, once we go into the shadows, those emotions can also become emotional patterns. And so recognizing that we tend to go into these patterns, and that we don't have to stay in the patterns of, whether or not it's, because our physiology holds on to those emotional experiences. So if we're sad, we, might tend to go lay down and but stay there and get stuck in that space. And so, I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about that piece of it as well.
So really the key is neutrality, to allow the emotions from a state of neutrality, because as soon as we identify with it, grab onto it, or push it away, then we're back in that prison. And so it's a process. Even this week I was in the prison for a little while, And so it's not like we can do the AAA, aware, acknowledge, accept, and be done. It's a process of us doing it again and again and again and again, and catching ourselves when we've actually grabbed on to a feeling. So for me, I have spent like $100,000 bringing my books and my course to, and really my ROI has been very small. And I know I'm trusting that the right audience will find me, and people will be served by what I do. But that feeling of I'm not doing this right because I'm not selling enough books, I'm not, it's not happening, I'm doing it wrong, was a feeling that was repetitive. And even this very week, I spent, probably 30 minutes crying about it because I'm not reaching enough kids and I'm not changing enough lives. But the reality is that the universe moves at its own pace. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't always happen exactly when we want it to. And so learning for me, it's just the surrender. Though I did say to my soul, you know what, I'm not putting any of my money into this anymore. I need to spend my money on me. And so if you want this to be a success, you got to find the funds and make it happen. Mm-hmm. So, right now I'm doing a lot of podcasts and not doing a lot of paid marketing. And when the funds become available, then I'll do paid marketing. But for right now, it's about, reaching the right audience and getting the message out.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's definitely a beautiful message. And I love what you said about surrender. Mm-hmm. I think sometimes we get into that pressure or wanting something to happen so bad that it's almost we're feeling like we have to do it alone, or we have to try really hard. And but when it's in alignment with what your soul is here to do, that flow will happen. And so I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit more about just what does it mean to truly surrender?
That is a rabbit hole. Oh my God.
She's pretty good at asking the rabbit hole questions.
I think I've done 5 blog posts on that. And every time I think that I've surrendered, I realize I've only surrendered partially. So, people think about surrender and it's, okay, I'm in a LA traffic jam and I'm not going to be resistant to it. And that's a level of surrender. But how easy is it to be in surrender when you've spent all of your savings and you haven't had income for 3 years? That's really hard to be in surrender at that point. And so a rabbit hole, it's really important for us as souls having a human adventure to trust that our soul has this all handled. And so, we have our own agenda and our own timing, and we think it's supposed, my problem was that I had psychics who said, oh, your book is going to be a New York Times bestseller. Well, in 6 months, I've sold 26 books. It's like, that's a long way around from a New York Times bestseller. But the messages are getting out. And, the more I talk to people who truly understand the impact of what facing our shadow feelings is, and how much freedom and how much joy come into your life when you did that. My friend talked about she had to dig a well of depression in order to fill it with joy. If she had not gone through and faced those feelings, she'd still be in that hole, in that prison. But she allowed the feelings and was released to start filling it with joy.
It sounds like she was really able to take those feelings and replace it with something that was deep and meaningful for her, and replace it with this joy,
and not through escape.
Right.
And because there is no escape from feelings.
Right. And I think that's goes for both sides, and what you said about neutrality, right? So like where we can go into surrendering to the feelings that are the maybe the shadow side, and also surrendering to the other feelings, like that desire to want to make something happen and creating
the desire to even not feel the feeling that you're surrendering to. And that's where I got into this really mind-bending place of, if I'm resistant to being resistant, am I in surrender? I don't know.
That is a really beautiful ponder. And what does that truly mean, being resistant?
That's why it's such a rabbit hole.
Right. I love that. Just thinking, I mean, because sometimes that resistance can be so strong, and we, I think it's important to come back to the body. How is the body feeling into that?
Yeah.
What is the body really focusing on, and how do we release that, that layer of resistance? Because that layer can be coming from anywhere, that is on our, linear timeline, or our, even in our lifetime, and beyond, really.
Feelings are energy. And we can bump into feelings that aren't our own. And especially if we have empathic ways, think that there are feelings. And so I say, ask yourself, is this my feeling? Half the time I get no. And then I'm like, okay, I'm releasing the feeling because I don't have to feel someone else's feeling.
Absolutely. And so I'm wondering, are there tools that you have that can identify, that can work through, identifying what is your feeling, what is someone else's feeling, and helping to release that?
It's really one of the meditations, and this meditation is actually in the books for kids. So it's very powerful, but it's taking you through nice feelings and having you simply feel the energy in your body. When I say happy, how does that bubble up in you? And noticing that feeling. And what the meditation is doing is bringing you into awareness of your body and how the energy flows in your body. And it's so important to spiritual growth, even because when we think about the law of attraction, it is through feeling that it actually works. And so by becoming cognizant of, hey, I'm having this feeling, it's in my solar plexus and it feels like a lump of clay, and, you know, just becoming aware of your feelings is a very powerful tool to of just becoming self-aware.
Mm-hmm. That self-awareness, I think, is really key.
It is. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And as you work through the layers, I think it becomes easier and easier to identify what is yours and what is someone else's.
It's like everything else, it's a process. And it doesn't come, you know, we have all these filters that were handed to us by others. And that's a process of even questioning, you know, is that thought of I'm not enough, is that mine, or is that mom from when I was 4 years old? And she was talking to a 4-year-old, but I'm not 4. Does it really apply to me now? And just having that kind of curiosity exploration of your own thoughts.
Right. And
or what you think are your thoughts.
Right, exactly. And that's actually one thing. And you were talking about it earlier too, about you know, separating others' feelings from your own feelings, and asking yourself, are these mine or are these somebody else's? And for me, I know, you know, I have such a I guess you could say a thick inner dialogue going on, that, you know, when you know, I am around somebody and they are feeling a certain way or something, and I'm an empath, so I, you know, I'm very open to other people's feelings and to identify them as my own. That's one thing. But another thing you were talking about is, you know, learning from other people's feelings. Like, you know, when you said your mom, when you were 4, you know, told you this, that, or the other thing, and it really hit you, and, you know, you grew up with that thought or that feeling. But with other people's behavior, and when they do, you know, trigger something in us, how can we, I guess you could say, you know, how can we not only separate ourselves from that, but how can we learn from their feeling, their separate feelings, their emotions or something? Because one thing, you know, I believe that you might say in your book, or I've heard other people say it, is thanking people for triggering something in you that you have to work on, you know. And for me, like my ego gets in the way a lot of the time of that. You know, it's usually like a standoffish kind of position instead of a gratitude position, you know. So how do you kind of get your mind over to the thank you for doing A, B, or C, for triggering A, B, or C in me, because that's something that I need to work on?
So part of it is getting out of victim mentality, because as long as we're thinking they're doing that and it's triggering me, then we're working in that victim energy triangle, and it's a really powerful and magnetic triangle. So it's important to remove yourself from that. But the way that I teach in my books is everybody is a mirror for us. So their behavior is mirroring the part in us that is that needs attention. And so we can thank them for holding up that mirror that reveals to us where we have work to do.
Absolutely. I love that. I use that a lot as well, in recognizing that, you know, it isn't about what's out here, it's about what's in here. And so every relationship and experience, I think, is, you know, a reflection back to us for something that we get to work on and help our own soul evolve and the growth of our being. So I just love that.
Yeah. And what it is an energy match, because we're carrying within us the energy that matches that behavior. And that's why we're triggered. So them doing that behavior is a gift for us to see this part of us. And it took me probably 2 years to get to leave my marriage and be able to look at my ex and say, wow, he gave me such a gift. To really be able to examine all these parts that are an energy match for that behavior.
That's really beautiful. And also to recognize that nothing is personal, right?
True.
They're living their own journey, we're living ours, and we're just creating these experiences based on the things that we chose to come down here for.
And that hurt people because that's what they learned. And when we can, let's take the label of narcissist and say, those are really injured souls, really injured. They are only acting in coping in the way that they were taught. And so when we can take out that they're doing it to me, it's personal, and see them for where they are, and send love to them. And I could not do that. I could not love unconditionally when I was the recipient of rage and blame. I had to remove myself in order to be able to send unconditional love.
Which makes sense.
Yeah, when you're in the situation, you're always going to have the condition. When you treat me better, I will love you that way.
Right.
Yeah, and once you separate yourself, it's easier to do the healing work. I mean, you can, do it while you're there, but you're always being triggered, and it's like putting salt on a wound, and you're continuous. But like when you remove yourself from the situation, I think it's easier to go to those places and heal, and then raise your vibration too. And and then shift some energy, and then you're going to attract the new energies and new people in your life that are going to match that.
Absolutely. And that is just such a beautiful way of saying it, because yes, as soon as you take care of that energy within, you now raise your vibration, and you're now a match to a different level of energy. And when we think about women or men who are in abusive marriages, they leave the marriage, they don't do the inner work, they think it's the other person who was the problem, and they get into the same situation again and again and again. So it's only when you take care of that, your own inner shadows, and really pay attention to them, that you can heal enough to match at a different level.
Absolutely. It's really about going within in the inner journey. That's where it starts. It's never outside of us. Such a beautiful, and it's so empowering to, take that belief on, because when you do, then you recognize that you're the sovereign being, you're the empowered one to step forward and make these shifts in your life and truly create the life that you desire. Everything is within your reach.
Absolutely. I impress upon kids that they carry magic within, and the magic is love. And it's self-love, and it's unconditional love. And just being in that space of love, we can change the world.
Absolutely. That is that is my mission in life.
Me too.
Oh, I love it. It is, I mean, and to recognize that, we are truly magical beings
Yes.
and we are on this journey and there's no mistakes and, everything's about love and it starts within.
Yeah. And everything is in service to love. Even those things that are so hard for us as humans to accept. They are about awakening the love.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your course, Live, Love, Laugh.
So Live, Love, Laugh is an 8-week journey, and it's really about, I start off with adding playfulness, adding curiosity, because those childlike qualities are what feed the magic in our lives. But you can't be totally in playfulness and curiosity when you're carrying some of that onion peel of shadows. So I go into facing all of your emotions, and that's a whole week. And I talk about shifting your perspective and letting go of perspectives handed to you by others. And that's another whole week. And then self-trust and self-love is another whole week. And what I'm gifting to your audience is a self-love activation meditation that basically it's all about awakening the energy of self-love within.
That's beautiful. Thank you. And we'll add that to this episode.
Okay.
And so thank you
and
for
we can
that.
also we'll also put it in the show notes too for those of you that are listening as well, so you can have a readily available copy whenever you need it.
And so Angela,
I know people are busy. It's only a 10-minute meditation, so you can fit it in the in-between times.
Yeah,
there's always enough time for self-love.
Thank you.
And love and just being love. Yes. And so Angela, I'm wondering if you could tell our listeners how they can find you and what you're currently working on.
Okay, so you can find everything, my books, my online course, my meditations. There are several free and then some paid activations. All of that is on my website, angelalegh.com. And it's AngelaLegh, no I, angelalegh.com. And the online course is also available on the Essentials Academy. So there's 2 different ways you can access it. I do offer one-on-one mentoring for people who want help with facing those shadows. And there's, a page for that.
Beautiful. Okay, wonderful. And we'll add all of that, your links and everything to our show notes so people can easily access that. So,
and one quick question, Angela, where can people go to purchase your books?
It's on Amazon.com.
Okay.
The first book of this series, Bella Santini in the Land of Everlasting Change, is available on Amazon. And actually last week, Jack Canfield sent me an endorsement. So
wow.
Yeah.
Well, if that doesn't catapult sales.
Yeah, I'm hoping.
Yeah.
It's all about helping kids avoid the hardship that we went through. Because knowing how to face emotions gives you freedom in life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Angela, so much for being here today with us and sharing the space to have this conscious conversation. And thank you for listening to our show. Stay tuned for more episodes being released on Mondays at 5:55 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. And if you've enjoyed listening to our show, we would absolutely love a 5-star written review on iTunes. And of course, please share the love by sharing it with your friends. And if you want to support the work that we're doing, please consider making a donation to our show by visiting our Patreon website at patreon.com/Be the Love Podcast. And until next time, love yourself, love each other, and love the world. We love you.
Love you guys. Take care, and we'll talk to you later.
Bye. We at Be the Love Podcast are honored to be supporting the Kamoti Foundation, which is a nonprofit organization in Uganda that is working to build a school that will promote and support healthcare, education, skills development, feeding the hungry, human rights, and environmental defenders. Their goal is to work with young mothers and single mothers, street children, and vulnerable families who lack nurture as they guide them to become productive individuals, which will lead to a productive generation. Please see our show notes on how to become a donor, mentor, volunteer, or sponsor.
Thank you, Heather Lynn, for providing us with your beautiful song to accompany our show, Be the Love. If you would like to learn more about Heather Lynn and her music, please visit her website at heatherlynnmusic.com. And thank you, Chrissy Grace at Leading Edge Productions for the beautiful design and graphics.
And thank you for tuning in. And until next time, we are souls on the journey. And thank you for hopping on the Ascension bus with us. And remember, there is always a seat for you.